right, good morning. Let's see, why am I over here? Okay. All right, good evening. Sorry about that. I had a little glitch here and didn't even know where I was or what time of the day it was. All right, I wanted to get this one out tonight, and then I'll probably later get another one and two before the market opens. All right, we're closing in on the final day of the month. All right, so what happened with YBIT? These YBITs are exciting. I know several of us bought into the fun over the last couple of days. So we see that in the shares. Yesterday was a big share day. Today, less so. So we got 25,000, right? Again, that could have been 49,000, and they only show in increments of 25. So we were down, or sorry, we were not down. We were up 20.635. There was a gap to be filled there. So I set my order at 2063 and got filled, and then I noticed it did go on down to 2040, but I was trying to time at least that gap that was open. But congrats on anybody that bought in. I think we'll be very happy with the payday. All right, so we're up 2.35. Now we don't want to run past 28.50, right? That's our ideal, still even or not in the money to hurt our weekly call. So we're up 2.35. What did YBIT do? Well, we were up 1.9, right? So not quite the same. So by 25,000 shares being purchased, put a little more cash in the fund, and we went out, and let me share the transaction sheet. A lot of times I just enter these and don't bother, but it's another chance to be an education, right? So 3 trades, all the same quantity. Now on Fridays, you'll notice that we'll see a bunch of BCs, buy to close, right? But this is synthetic, the first two. We continue to work at the 36, okay? And they did 80 contracts, right? So we make great money on these because they're way out of the money. So we buy a call for 7 cents because it's $8+ out of the money. And then we sell a put, which gives us a liability, but we get some nice cash. But at 80 contracts, it's not a huge. And so I'll show you all this activity. So let's start with the call. And by the way, they're smart. Even as of yesterday on the 29th, they're going out to week 6, 7. Now I'm going to give you guys a nuance that I picked up when Jay was talking in his interview that was recorded on 29. And it's a small nuance that probably would have gone over the head of many people. And I didn't even think about it, but it triggered my thought. So I'm going to share something with you when I point that out later here. And I think it gives us a competitive advantage, but the marketplace is aware of it and they'll adjust the options. But I just thought you should know, because my prior comments about having a close strike isn't so close after all, and I'll explain. Okay, so on 530, right, they went up 235%, we went up 1.9. We sold 80 calls at a strike price of 28, right? The day before we sold into this 6-7 week at 27.5, I'm like, oh my God, we're 27.23. They're selling at 27.5, and there's, a week plus 1 day of trading. Why on earth would they do that, right? Well, listening to the Jay interview was educational. All right, so let me take you over, and I'll put you in the weeklies and I'll talk about this. And then I'll go show you the synthetic. Okay. So here's our 2 color-coded 6-7 contracts, and here's our one that expired. So we really don't want to go over 28.50, right? I think we sold that for what, 31 cents? 38 cents, right? So we got some cushion, but in a perfect world, we collect all that money, right? Jay also commented about, hey, the time decay, and thank you for one of my new subscribers and new commenters mentioned um, that we don't have to worry as much about being when we run into the money that it'll come out of the sold calls or bought calls and sold puts, basically the synthetic. I've always assumed that, but in reality, in my opinion, it's better to win on both sides. But I have seen them have to roll, so I'm getting good at knowing when they're going to roll because they got to go back and secure money so they can buy that extrinsic, really out of, in the money call that they sold that just ran by everything. So let's, we can continue down that path. I think I'm getting pretty good at being able to predict this and understand it. All right, so let me educate you as to something unique with this fund that no other yield max fund has. Okay, so first off, we use BITO, right? Other funds might have a single stock that pays a dividend, right? So you could go out there and have Microsoft, and I think Microsoft pays a, small dividend. But does that really affect the calls or the puts on MSFO, right, when they're dealing with Microsoft? No, it really doesn't, right? Because the amount of income in the call that they're getting, if the stock price is, $900 and they're giving, 7 cents a share, you wouldn't even notice 7 cents being subtracted at all. And Jay made an interesting comment in the interview. He talked about when they were selecting BITO, right, when they wanted to do a BTC-oriented single fund, why wouldn't you? They're so popular. Look at ProShares. They came out in 2021 of October with BITO. It's been wildly successful. And they have about 9 different BITO, Ethereum, combo, BITO and Ethereum. They have bulls, they have bears, they have 2 times bullish, 2 times bearish. So they got a plethora of funds, which gives us some interesting hedging strategies when we want to hedge that, right? But here's the nuance. The nuance is BITO, and I assume some of these other ones, it's really hard to figure out which ones pay and which ones don't. I'm digging and combing through and so I'm trying to find all that. It's not easy, but nonetheless it exists. So I personally own BITO for 3 months. And what happened is they had a very low payout amount. And Jay addressed this. He said, hey, when we put the fund on, first off, there's no dividends that are going to flow to YBIT because you own BITO. Because you do not own BITO shares. You only own calls and puts and naked calls, right? You buy calls, you sell puts for a synthetic, you sell short weekly calls, and none of those are actual shares of BITO. So many questions, many people ask. It's kind of like the NVIDIA question. Hey, what's the impact on NVIDIA when NVIDIA does a 1-for-10 split? Well, there's 0 impact on NVIDIA, okay? Because NVIDIA doesn't own any NVIDIA shares. What happens is all those calls and puts just get readjusted. So if it's a 10-to-1 and you own a $1,100 call, it's going to go to a $110 call. And then they adjust the quantity down to 10 times more than it was when you had an 1100, right? So all that's handled by the exchanges. You and I don't deal with that. And you and I, as an NVIDIA holder, okay, if we owned it, then we keep the same amount of shares because NVIDIA has its own price that I wouldn't say has nothing to do with NVIDIA, but it doesn't directly affect the stock price because the share count takes care of that. Okay, does that make sense? So what happens is in BITO has, every month they're paying a dividend. Well, when Jay and them applied to the SEC, it was probably 4 or 5 months ago, and their highest payout was probably 20 cents, maybe 30 cents. I don't remember. I've only owned it for 3 or 4 months. I think I've gotten 5 payments. Okay. And they declare roughly around the same time, but typically a day or two before we do in our single stock fund. So tomorrow at the end of the day, I think, again, I'm not sure of the time, but they declare on 5/31, but I think it's the end of the day. They'll declare on BITO how much the dividend is. Okay. So it doesn't impact us in the traditional way. We don't get any of that. But I, as a shareholder, I'll get that dividend. But by the way, then they go ex-dividend on Monday the 3rd. But they don't pay this time. I did read this till the 10th. Last time they paid the exact same day as we did in May, but they declared a day or two before we did. This time they declare many days, right? They declare on Friday and we don't declare until Wednesday, but they actually pay a day later. So kind of interesting. So here's the key. Let's say they, and their dividends has been going up. So I got $1.04, $1.12, and then $1.48, I think was my last payment last month. I think personally, based on some things I track by tracking YBIT and looking at BITO in here and looking at their future holdings, I have a feeling they could pay as much as $2.09. Okay, that would be my prediction. But I don't absolutely know, right? Again, it's a guesstimate. And not even that good because they don't actually show the prices the way that YieldMax does, right? If I don't have this detail, then I don't know exactly what all they do is say, oh, at the end of the day, we sold the May futures contracts and we bought this many Junes, right? Well, what price did you pay? So that I know what the current price is. I know if you're making or losing. So anyway, I got a $2.09. Here's how that impacts us, okay? So, and our guys are smart enough with Bloomberg terminals and all this stuff. So when we write a 27.5 call that appears to be so in the money, watch what happens. So let's do the math. Let me go over here to our payment sheet. Actually, I don't want to use that. I'll use an area of that I can draw and write more. Let's use this. I'll just go down here in these empty columns. Okay. So let's say they're at 27.87. I'm going to use even numbers. Let's say that we close on Friday at, whoops, I didn't want to do that, at 28. Okay. So let's say that on Friday at 5 o'clock after the markets close, they declare a $2. I'm going to make the math easy, right? So Monday, on ex-dividend date, BITO is going to open up at $26, right? The pre-market, based on the supply and demand, can alter all that. But in theory, and they'll do this, early Sunday morning before they even, or Monday morning before they even open early trading, pre-market trading, it'll show a value of 26. And then it starts to trade, right? Because there's always some half-smart person that, well, Bruce, you're wrong. It opened at, 26.20 or 25.80. Well, that had to do with supply and demand and the pre-market getting set by the orders that were coming in, right? But they always subtract the payment out of the previous closing price. So what does that have to do? Sorry, long story. What does that have to do with us? Well, when you cast a call for next week at 6-7, whatever that dividend is, you can add it here, or in our beneficial cases, you can subtract it, right? So whatever that dividend is, if it's $2, this is like having a 29.50 call, and this is like having a 30 call, right? We've got some room to run that doesn't appear right now. But smart people see smart things. So Jay said when we did it, it had a small one. We weren't even thinking about that. It wasn't much of an issue. Well, it's a little bit more of an issue now, right? They really have to think about that and know what they're doing when they place these orders in advance. Now, in some fairness, there's not much room for you to arbitrage that knowledge. If there was just you and I and a few smart people that figured this out, we could go out and make a ton of money. Trust me, the market makers and the options know about all this, right? And so it gets reflected in that. That's why they were able to go so close to the money and know that they were going to have room, right? So that's my whole point in educating you guys. And to my knowledge and thinking about this, they don't own another single stock fund that pays such a big dividend. Think of it like almost like a yield max, right? Although, where am I on this one? Well, I got some more to show you, but look at this. This, by the way, this drops because we keep adding shares, right? We actually added a little bit of money here in this column, and that moved us from 2 or 3 cents to 6 cents, right? But this dropped from $7.99 because of the share count, right? Even though we sold some more and we added a little bit of money. So now let me take you back into things that are happening. So here's our weeklies, right? The good news is, as we moved up, we went back to still capturing. You know, we were at 63% captured. But what this does is this takes all of these calls, right? The early ones for next week and this one. So the 43% captured. If you want to know what have we captured on just this guy, it's gonna be, that's a blended average, but that's the one we care about the most for Friday. So if we go here to holdings, I can see it. We've captured 72%, right? But look at this guy. This is 1270, but it's got a whole nother week. And at 27.5, all of a sudden, that's going to drop tremendously come Monday, because this stock is going to drop, you know, whatever the dividend is, $1, $1.50, $2. I'll stick with my 209. I think it's somewhere between 150 and 210, but I'm just picking 209. It's just a number that sticks in my head. So let's see if I'm not. You guys can call me out when we know and say, Bruce, you missed that one, or hey, good job, you were close. But it's almost impossible to have an accurate, you know, I feel much more accurate in this one. So let's recap. Sorry, this is getting long in the tooth here. All right, so you care a little bit. Here's all of our accounting numbers. This continues to get worse. Well, why? Because we're using a 36. And guys, think of how far out of the money this thing is going to be when we drop to, you know, $26 or low 26s, right? So I do think, though, that BITO is going to run, or BTC is going to run, which will drag. But that's why, even myself, when I very first bought BITO, I think it was like 30 or something, my first 100 shares, and then I DCA'd a little bit. But it's hard to get back to 30 because they've been paying out more than they're used to paying out, right? And the other thing, BITO is not going to be as consistent, right, in their payouts. Not that EOMax is going to be consistent, but they aren't as oriented to their payout as they are to just making money in BITO. And as a matter of fact, these payouts really hurt them. They hurt them more than I think EOMax, because they're having to take it right out of their trading profits, right? And they're not really using options. They're pretty much just buying and selling and moving from front month to second and third month out, right? And so the real performance of the underlying totally impacts them. So it's kind of fascinating. I mean, I don't like this being out here like this. But I think you're going to see the end of the day Friday, if they went on this 28.5, you know, they could go right at 27 and do, and maybe they wait till Monday. I'm thinking if I'm them, I wait till the price is reset, right, on Monday. Maybe they don't really buy the next week ones until Monday at the opening. I don't know what their philosophy is about not having a weekly call deployed while they have synthetics, but as I think deeply on it, that's probably what I would do, because then the minute the market closes and on the Monday open would be the first chance they can sell new calls, this scenario would be there, where they can more accurately see how the pricing is reflected, right? So that 26.5 may be better than the 27, maybe better than the 27 and a half. Anyway, I'll bore you guys if I keep going on that. So let me get out of that. So we got our May, we got our holdings. 2064 is what we closed at, 2635, but it rounds. They're saying the fair value based on these numbers, the NAV and the share count is 2092. So we're trading at a discount if you view it that way, right? I did notice that in the after hours, we opened up. It's way beyond that now. Let me see what BITO or YBIT itself. Yeah, YBIT, and that's all stopped. It was trading 2095 and 2094. You know, I have no idea if people saw this, if somebody saw, you know, my videos or another YouTuber figured out, you know, that this is going to pay well, and then people were busy at work and they came home and said, oh my gosh, you know, I still have time to buy some in the aftermarket shares. But again, you know, they're paying 2094 and 2095, and you know, we only traded, what was the range here for the day? I think it was, I know it opened up around 85 or 92, 75. I know I waited about an hour and a half with my 2063 order before it got filled into the market. And then later, I didn't watch the market anymore. At the end of the day, I saw it actually went down as low as 2040 and closed right at 2063.5. But interesting that people traded that at 2095 and 2094 in the aftermarket. So people are after it, you know. Dividends attract people, not always for the right reasons. Don't chase yield. If you believe in the underlying, much better, right? Because you know that it's going to drop the next day. If we were to get a $3.50 payment, which we could, you know, it's going to drop $3.50, right, the next day on June 4th. Okay, and you guys know that you have to buy by declaration date, right? So you can buy anytime during the regular hours. I still haven't tested the theory. If you buy in the I know if you buy in the pre-market on June 5th, you would get the dividend. I know if you buy during the day, you get the dividend. I've never tested if you buy in the aftermarket. My gut says you won't. I saw somebody post you did, but I couldn't argue with them because I didn't want to test it, right? I never experienced that. So FYI on that, right? Buy in the regular market, buy in the pre-market, buy before, buy tomorrow, right? Don't mess around if you believe in BTC in the medium term. You know, I don't care if it doesn't perform for a couple of weeks after. You know, I'm pretty sure that BITO is going to go, or BTC is going to go a lot higher, and then so will BIT. Oh, BITO. Okay, that's what I got for you. Looking like a 2.5 plus. Why am I saying that? Because that's conservative. They're not going to pay all this out. This could drop to $7, right? You start adding shares. Let's go over here and I'll show you what I mean. Let's make this 900,000, right? Leave everything else the same. Look at that, right? So that easily could happen, right? With you guys buying it and chasing the yield. And so they're going to pay less money. They're probably going to pay, if the best scenario would be 315, they're never going to pay more than 50% of this. We only got a nickel over here. And that's not likely. We're going to get one more, you know, selling of calls on Friday, or even waiting till Monday, and then we'll pick up a little bit of money here. But that's probably 50,000 over here. That's going to give you pennies. That's going to make this 9 cents or 10 cents, right? So I'll fix this. But just FYI for you guys, I wanted you to know that, right? Okay, that's what I got for you. There's really nothing else as we close in. That's my declaration. I'll probably put out a declaration video tomorrow after the markets are on Saturday for everything that I'm aware of. But I think we should have a 250 plus kind of distribution, which would just be awesome and fantastic, right? Okay, see you guys. Have a good one. Again, not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is fun and entertainment. Hope you are entertained. See ya.